Hello, everybody. Uh, oh, hi, everybody. Hello, thanks for joining. I've got a feeling I'm going to be letting people in for the next 10 minutes, to be honest. So
I'll help.
We'll get started in 1 minute. I think I've not done this before, like host the session and watch for letting people in. Normally got teams of people who do that. What a pampered prince I am. Okay, thanks everybody for joining, and we're going to get started now. So, a couple of things from me first. I'm Adam, in case I don't know you. I think I know most of the people who are here so far. I'm just going to let you know what we're going to be doing today. So we've got a focus on a very specific subject, which I think is really, really important, and that is what are the most important things that we can do as employers and people that work in talent and recruitment to encourage more female applicants and to bring more people through the recruitment funnel, saying yes to their jobs, negotiating effectively, and then joining you excited about doing the job. So this session is going to be recorded. So if there are people that you work with or friends who you think might want access to this subsequently who haven't made it live, then you're very welcome to share the recording subsequently. Just send me a message and I'll share that with you. I'll be sharing it on social media as well. And everybody here is on mute at this point, but if you've got a question, then depending on how the numbers go, you're very welcome to either raise your hand and I may be able to bring you on screen to ask the question, or post it in the chat. If somebody can please just post in the chat to make sure that I have set it up so that you're able to, that would be really great. So I'm just looking for one person saying hi or something like that. Thanks, Mel. That's really useful. Hi, Una. Hi, Viva. Okay, so let's get started. My special guest today is Ruth Penfold-Brown. Ruth, many thanks for taking the time to get up a little bit. Well, you tend to get up early anyway, but joining us from a different time zone on the other side of the Atlantic. That's really great. Just give us a quick introduction. Like, who are you? Tell us about your career. How did you get to like 2023? And then tell us what it is you do now as well, because everybody will find that very useful before we get into the main subject.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. And thank you, Adam, for hosting this session. Very much appreciate you and the brilliant work that you do. So for me, I am I guess, people and talent person as of about 20 something years now. So cut my teeth in recruitment, like probably many of you, maybe, don't know. And then I took that in-house with Shazam. And then after I was at Shazam for almost 5 years until we sold to Apple. And then I stepped up into the sort of broader leading the people function, sort of CPO type role. And I did that with Onfido, machine learning. So very much staying in the tech world. And then BP Launchpad was my last employment, my last employed role. So that is an investment company owned by BP, where we were setting up I was kind of one of the founding team, although it was owned by BP, setting up that business for the first time. So lots of cultural challenges, lots of kind of meaty stuff to navigate there. And then I set myself free. So that was about 18 months ago. And since freedom, I have been building courses and programs around how to create a culture of innovation. I have been coaching, predominantly leadership coaching, working with a myriad of different roles, often CEO, but often also the people person or the talent person or whoever. And really over the last 12 months, what I was noticing was two things. I was sort of facilitating in two ways. I was helping the CEOs that I was working with to create the right dynamic and environment that was more inviting to people who are different to them, and learn to communicate in that way. But I was also helping and working with a lot of women on, helping to sort of level up in their career, overcome imposter syndrome, build confidence. I was also coaching men one-on-one too, and I was noticing a big difference between men's seemingly ability to get out of their own way faster than women who had a lot of more self-esteem issues, self-doubt, imposter syndrome. And I guess I had this moment where I was like, you know what, I recognize all of what I am helping walk these women through, because it's everything that I experienced in my own career. You know, by the time I got to that leadership table, I had to then find my voice and learn that I deserved to be there, because I was full of imposter syndrome and holding myself back, yada, 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 right? So through that, I basically now have built a program called Bloom, which is essentially bringing those learnings together in a kind of actionable program that takes women on the journey of building confidence, of taking up space, of learning how to communicate with influence, of bringing themselves authentically, wholly into the workplace, and maybe most important of all, banishing burnout, right? Which is something I think many of us, and this applies to women and or everybody, right? Like, we're living this very ugly cycle of sort of burnout, take time out, work too hard, burn out again. So it's really about creating sort of that sustainable way of being. So bringing you up to today, really, I'm doing a blend of those. I'm bringing Bloom into companies and hosting workshops and things like that, helping to sort of change the world that we live in just a tiny little bit by hopefully improving the experience of others, even whoever I touch, ideally in some way.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. That's a great place to start. So what I want to find out about is, for probably 10 years now, I think companies are becoming progressively more aware of the power of diverse teams. And there's actually irrefutable evidence now about the impact to the bottom line that diverse teams create. But in many cases, we are still failing to create them. So why do you think that is? What's the biggest challenge for an employer when it comes to creating a diverse team?
Well, that's a great question. And I think diversity fails without inclusion. So even if you have managed to hire a diverse team, you will quickly find that team may start to self-select out, because you're not actually managing to create the right kind of inclusive environment. And psychological safety is a really big deal. And there's a thinker on this topic called Timothy R. Clark, who talked about the 4 stages of psychological safety. And the basic one is, am I basically recognized as a human? Do I have belonging in this social group? And I think most companies don't get past stage 1. No, I don't belong in this social group. And where companies are failing is because when you have a less diverse team, there are cultural norms that you can pretty much expect will be in place, right? If I say this thing, you're probably going to understand what I mean, right? In a diverse team, those norms don't necessarily exist. So the missed opportunity is in us, I guess, building. I love team manifestos, Adam, right? Like, where you basically agree together how you're going to show up and create, like, you work to do the hard yards, I guess, of creating the norms, so that you all can therefore, when I say this, we know what that means, and we know who we're trying to be as a team, and we know where we're trying to go as a team, and we're not making assumptions that people feel more welcome than they do. And honestly, that's one of the challenges that I've seen coming up with CEOs the most, is that the assumption that their experience of their organization is everybody's experience of their organization.
Gosh, yeah, there's an awful lot to unpack in that, what you just said. Because this is a subject that you know intimately, every sentence there gives me questions. Because I think I know what you mean, and
Right.
I really need to understand it more. So, first of all, I think I massively believe that communication is really vital, because what you just said there was the CEO's view typically of where they work is typically what they think everybody's view is. And this is, I've done a lot of study around NLP, and one of the presuppositions of NLP is that, the map is not the territory. So what you know is as the map is not what everybody is not necessarily what everybody else sees. Everybody's got a slightly different map based on their experience in the world, and we've all had different experiences, of course. So how do we go about, I think we have to therefore actively go about attempting to create inclusive processes so that one person or a group of people's vision is not the thing which guides us to create our like recruitment processes. So what are the things that we can do to create the most inclusive kind of processes that are going to, let's start with the bit around like attracting people. So you said, for example, people will very quickly maybe look at an organization and go, I'm not sure that's for me. So what can we do like to project an impression that, or project a, create an organ, I'm getting tied up here, aren't I? Because it's, you don't just project what you want people to see. How do we create processes which mean that we are inclusive organizations, and therefore can legitimately tell the world we are an inclusive organization?
Yeah. And I guess, and it starts by learning how to be an inclusive organization, right? Because what is going on the inside will be what projects on the outside. I mean, employer branding folks, we know this, right? Like, we know this stuff. What's happening on the inside, you can't help it. You can't help it. It is what you end up becoming on the outside. And so, I'll give you an example of, like, people talk a lot about radical candor these days. Love that book. Great book on feedback, like Kim Scott, great book, right? Brilliant. But it's kind of being taken and used in the wrong way. And so you've got that CEO going, well, we have a culture of radical candor here, which is great. We challenge each other, we tell each other what we think. And it's like that for that CEO, they feel safe to challenge and say what they think. But they are forgetting the fact that they are essentially like a god in an organization, whether you like it or not. We've all come from hierarchies. We will elevate those who are leading us above us, more often than not, unless we've learned a different way, right? So when that person is behaving like that and feeling good, they don't know how bad that feels for everybody else when they slide up into their Slack DMs and go, hey, did you do that thing? The person on the other end of it's freaking out. They don't feel safe, and off we go, right? So it starts at the top table of the organization, understanding their impact truly on the humans within their teams. And then this kind of language, challenger culture, like that is a really fast way to turn off anybody who represents any kind of different to the potential CEO, right? Or to the potential leadership team. So many people will feel unsafe in that kind of dynamic. And so to your point about the process, like the attraction stage, so if I'm seeing if you have, let's say, women, because that's the group that I am working with and supporting the most, right? So let's say woman, seeing an application, like sees a job go live, or frankly, maybe we're not even there yet. Maybe we're just looking at the company and seeing what's coming out of it. And if I'm seeing challenger culture, all this sort of stuff in it, I'm already thinking this is not a safe space. I'm going to be shamed for if I get something wrong, I might be shamed. And so many of us are are working with different degrees of stuff, right? So shame is a really hard thing for us to feel, and we avoid it at all costs because it's horrible, right? So I love cultures where we're honest and transparent. By all means, do that. I'm here for it. But let's start communicating it in a way that's like, hey, we work really hard to try to be really open and honest with each other. But we also work on creating a really safe space together to be able to do that. That means that we take time to build relationships, and that we, as a company, and your boss is going to really want to know who you are and really help you to find your voice in our, or so there are these sorts of signals that you can start making to the world that you actually do care and value different in your organization, and that you're going to do some work for us in advance to help us to make us feel safe there.
Okay, so it's not enough. So this is there's a fine balance here, isn't there? There's a real fine balance between saying we welcome everybody's input and ideas, and then the people feeling like, yeah, I don't feel safe to do that. So what you need to do is genuinely adopt a culture where it really is safe, and it's honestly, like, the people are honestly welcome to do that. So doing this is giving evidence of where it's happened. Does that help, for example?
Yeah. Well, and also even just saying it shows me that you care, right? Very simple thing that people started doing on applications, right? And I sort of, it's like you're inviting different people in. So you probably are going to lose a woman from an application process if we think we don't meet all the requirements for the role. And simple signals like we know that people can sometimes be put off from applying for a job if they think they don't meet all the criteria. But we realize the perfect candidate doesn't exist. So if you're excited about working for us and can do most of what we're looking for, go ahead and apply. We'd love to hear from you. You could be exactly what we need, right? So like you're that is not a big thing for you to do in your process, but it's sending a very clear message to me as someone that represents something different, that hey, I might be safe here, right? It's these little tells, if you will, that it also and that's though why, coming back to psychological safety, the microaggressions in your organization that you allow will become your culture, right? So this stuff is hard work. I'm not saying it's easy to create a company where people all feel safe in it. It's not easy, but it is not also impossible if you've got humans that really care about building it.
There's, for somebody that doesn't, as you can tell, this is one of the least comfortable interviews I've ever done with anybody, and I do stuff like this a lot. And one of the ways that I know it's one of the least is because my questions for you, I'm finding it really difficult to be able to articulate them in the right way without saying something that is naturally stupid of me to say in the way. Anyway, what you're really bringing out here is this. There are subtleties absolutely everywhere that we should go and actively review.
Yes.
So a job ad that says, here are the mandatory requirements and here are the nice to haves, that, I mean, functionally, that does what you said, but actually the language used in that is not really rolling out the welcome mat properly.
Yeah.
When an organization says in its job ads or its social media posts or whatever it is that it has an active policy of bringing in great people to the organization who might not tick every single box,
Yeah.
there may be then showing that this is real, that
Yes.
yeah, because you're absolutely right. Like manager of Manchester United, like, and every man who's never worked in football just goes, yeah, I could do that, right? Whereas women need, um, they do tend to need to feel like they've ticked a lot more of the boxes. So if
Yeah.
you actively say we don't need all the boxes ticked,
Yeah.
then that's quite a good start. So and you're right about the term microaggressions is another one. There's microaggressions absolutely everywhere,
Yeah.
which is why I think you need an active program for all of this, and somebody probably does need to kind of be the guardian for it,
Oh
because
yeah.
you can't, most people would write things that are full of bias. Most people, like internal communication, recruitment
Yeah.
communications, internal policies, all of that type of thing. If everybody just goes and writes it, then there will be microaggressions all over
Yeah.
the place. We've got some questions. Let's just go to Michael's question around, like, when you are creating a team manifesto, what are the steps that you would go through for that? And can you give any examples of, like, have you
Yeah.
done this, or yeah?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I've done it in teams. So I recommend, I mean, you've obviously got your organizational culture, you've probably got values, right? At a team level, well, so obviously you want the leadership team to understand and know what they mean and be living them, ideally. But then the team manifesto is more about what happens at team level. But the leadership team should have their own manifesto too, right? And have them with their own teams. And you can do it in a really simple exercise. When I've done it, and I do have a worksheet on this somewhere, if you want to share an email or something, I'm happy to share it to anyone that wants it. But you can go it's as simple as, okay, as a in a workshop setting, what do toxic team behaviors look like at this company or in other companies? What is the stuff that we've seen that we don't like? So it's less, hey, everybody, what do we do? I mean, by all means, if your team is ready for it, do a retro where you're like, what's good about us, what's bad about us, and let's get better, right? But you can keep it more kind of esoteric, you can keep it more like, what are the toxic behaviors that you have seen, witnessed, or experienced in this team or other team? And now let's reverse those and choose the 10 statements that are the most powerful for us. And now as a team, so it's literally take negative thing, turn it into positive thing. And then as a team, this becomes this sort of visible agreement. This is who we want to be together. And if we're not being that together, let's all agree right now that somebody in this team will call it out, because everybody needs to be aware, but lovingly call it out, not shamingly call it out, lovingly call it out. Although I will say for leaders here, it is a challenge to get that balance right between not publicly shaming somebody and calling out these microaggressions in real time, because as we all know, when you call them out behind closed doors, then the team that's witnessed it doesn't know it's been called out and thinks that you've just let it happen, right? So
Yeah.
this stuff isn't easy, and it's always going to be a balancing act between the needs of the individual and the needs of the team to know that something's being dealt with. I would always try to avoid public shaming. So maybe conversation happens in private, and then as a group, we acknowledge what happened and say, obviously we are aware that this happened here, and we take that seriously, so that you're avoiding that public shaming, because I mean that's then nobody feels safe, even if you're doing the right thing by shaming the person.
Yeah.
I don't think shaming's ever okay, honestly, but
Yeah.
if I think I'm going to be called out in a meeting for saying something in a wrong way, I'm really not going to speak up.
Yeah. Apparently, on my point about like mandatory criteria and nice to haves on job adverts, apparently there's some great Textio research which has highlighted that less than 6 points for the essential criteria is the right thing to do.
Oh, great. Love it.
Yeah. Viva has said, I think the actions have to follow the language on the job description. People will observe and feel excluded when they don't hear back after they apply.
Yeah.
Have you come up with something to deal with that? It's a trade-off between recruiter time and focus on inclusion when the candidates aren't qualified.
Yeah.
Oh, it's such a problem still today in 2023.
Yeah.
And I think many of us in talent acquisition really understand the importance of getting back to people. But
Yes.
when you're drinking from the fire hose and you've got so many things to deal with and
Yeah.
there's chaos everywhere, it is a
Yeah.
challenge. But is that one that what have you done about this?
Well, so I mean, gosh, if I like at Shazam, I made sure every single person heard back from us, and I actually didn't huge, but I mean, I think there are levels of automation. I think if somebody sent a CV, then having an acknowledgement email that says if we're interested and we'll get in touch, I think that is an appropriate response, right? If if you've had conversations with somebody, then you have to do more and you have to give them more. And, and if somebody's done interviews and actually, come on site or, I know we don't always go on site these days for interviews, but then I think that, they absolutely need to be hearing from someone. The challenge that we've got though, is that humans are at the mercy of our brains that are trying to always keep us safe from suffering, right? So when someone isn't telling somebody no, it's not because they're a bad person. It's because they don't want to. Their brain thinks it's going to be awkward, and they're not going to want to do it. So I mean, you've got to get. This is where learning how to give feedback in a loving way will really empower. And to have those sorts of conversations that leave the candidate going away feeling great about the process, even if they didn't get the job. Because fun fact, 2 of my clients who are now CEOs were candidates at Shazam who had such a good experience that they're like, hey, Ruth, I can see you're doing some other stuff now. Let's get, so like it is possible to not hire people and actually not just become friends, become great friends, but you've got to be supporting your team to level up on their humanity, on their ability to have challenging conversations, which is something I do lots of training on because it's so important, but we all avoid it to some degree. So if that's you and you're like, yeah, I totally avoid challenging conversations at work, you're not alone. That's all of us. We all don't like it, but it's a muscle that we can all build by just building the muscle, exercising it, getting better at doing it. I often liken it to driving a car. Like you're never going to get good at driving a car by sitting in your house. You actually have to be out on the streets making mistakes and going, oh, that was icky. Should we try that again?
Yeah.
But you're only gonna learn by doing it.
We've got some really great additional comments in the chat here. So Josh has said that signposting is important. So don't say you'll get back to them soon and leave them in the dark. Give a realistic time frame and be as transparent as you can be. I absolutely, every single communication you make in recruitment is an opportunity for you to reinforce something, to give people additional information they need at that specific moment. If you go through the experience yourself and then you can design the journey for what you would expect, that was really great. And Yasmin, wonderful point here. For those people who have maybe been rejected, you could publish some advice and link to that in the rejection messages. So one that I've done, for example, is when somebody's been rejected, you've got templates for they've been rejected because they don't have enough experience, or because they don't have a particular skill, or because they're not in the country and or don't have the right to work in the country, whatever. Then you've got at hand, you've got advice for those specific reasons why that person's been can't be taken further at this point. And if there's some chance that maybe they're a good candidate in the future, an opportunity for them to keep in touch and to learn from courses that you can share with them, or that type of thing. So really, really great advice, Yasmin, and Viva as well. Saw a rejection email where the company was recommending training materials to people to level up their skills. Very good. So what I'd like to talk a little bit more about is where female, more so than male applicants, female candidates can often remove themselves from an interview process and sort of quite silently self-select out and withdraw.
Yeah.
Why do females more likely do that than males? And what are the things that we can do to kind of keep them involved?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think first of all, I would say if we're learning things about your culture that we think are questionable in the process, then we may just politely decline. So, I mean, everything that we've just talked about is hugely relevant there. So, I mean, I won't go into all of that again, but like, whatever we're learning about you through the emails, through the messaging, through the people that we meet and the way that they are, through the how they make us feel. And I think, certainly I remember in my Shazam days, having to work really hard to try to eradicate the kind of good cop, bad cop interview process type thing, which I hope people still don't do. But like bad cop from an interview standpoint is something that's got to go. You can also be way more inclusive, like I think, and this isn't about a woman thing, like tell us in advance what we should expect in each stage, like this whole thing of, well, if they can handle it, then they should get the job, like frankly, people will tell us what you want, like tell us if you want a presentation or tell us if you don't want a presentation, because actually we might be more likely to produce a presentation and make it beautiful and spend hours doing it, and actually all you wanted was a quick conversation. We don't get to show our beautiful presentation we've spent hours on. We feel like you don't care about us, we might self-select out. If it's those sorts of things. And I think also there's the visibility within the hiring process of others and who we're meeting. That doesn't mean that if you don't have women in your leadership teams, then you don't have women in your leadership teams. But talk to us about it. Don't pretend it's not there, and say, look, we're not perfect, but for that reason, we don't need you to be perfect either. But hey, we're looking to bring in, we really want to create a diverse organization, and that means we've got to start somewhere. So we're going to need, we need the support of the people that we hire to help us get there, but here's how committed we are to getting there, right? Another thing that people don't talk about when we talk about self-selecting out is, so we might self-select out at application because we think we're not qualified to do the job. But also, if you really believe in us and we don't believe in ourselves, we might self-select out of that process because we think that the job that you want us to do is bigger than who we are. And I've had that with females that I've worked with before. So, for example, somebody didn't quite think they're ready for a head of people role yet, right? Absolutely, she could do it standing on her head. Because I was working with her from a coaching standpoint, I was helping her to step into that role and not be terrified. But I've also helped the other side too, this actually was a real case study where I was working with the company and working with the CEO to build out their people roadmap. I just happened to introduce her as an option, but I also had a relationship there too. So with him, I knew that he was going to say things that was going to trigger her to not think that she was worthy of the job. Like the more that he was talking about it from a leadership standpoint, so I helped him optimize the way that he explained the role in a way that made her feel like it wasn't beyond her. And I helped her go bigger within herself and lean in and step up. And it was right down to the point, because he wanted to offer her a fair salary, it was more than she was asking for. And by offering that higher salary, she then was reading that this job is bigger than I am because they want to pay me more money. And that means that I'm not going to be good. Like, they're going to know I'm not good enough for it because the stakes are higher. They want to offer me more money. So knowing that, knowing the kind of woman that she was, but honestly, lots of us might feel like that. So, knowing that meant that he was doing the right thing in wanting to offer her a fair salary. But it meant that if he was able to explain why he was offering it at that level and reinforce his belief in her, help her feel more comfortable with the role, and that help her understand it wasn't going to be beyond her. He hired her. She's doing, like, we're now 18 months later. I still work with her as a kind of mentor coach, and they're getting on great, right? And now she's about to go and get some more money. Try and get some more money,
Yes.
more equity. Yeah.
Yes. So a couple of comments about these things. Naomi said, just back to the interview process, Naomi said that she's tried to get a woman on an interview panel, been told no or it's not relevant, and then was embarrassed to hear the men talking about alleged support for women. And yeah, that's it. Do you think it's important to not just for tokenism, but do you think it's important to include females in, like, the interview process and in the recruitment communications and things like that?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And it doesn't mean, like, we don't all have huge organizations. We don't all have, but there's probably one person who you can at least run something past in your world if you're not sure. But yes, I mean, if there is a relevant woman available who could be interviewing, then arguably she should be interviewing. And yes, Naomi, I've had something similar, right? And when asked about the other thing is if you don't have a relevant woman on the panel, then the panel should be primed and understand how the organization is going to try to create safety for women and what they think about bringing women into, particularly if it's engineering, right? Like, how invested are they in bringing in women engineers, and and how does the company see that? Because if it's the first time that, and I've had this with a company too, where, like, if it seems like it's something that the male interview panel has never even thought about, then that's going to tell me as a woman that you're probably not going to if you're starting from no understanding that it could be harder for someone that's not like you to be in your organization, then the journey that I'm going to have to take you on as a woman coming into your organization is probably going to be too great. And I may then self-select out if I think that's going to be the case.
Viva said there's lots of opportunity to focus on hiring for outcomes and competencies versus hiring on pedigree and personality.
Yes.
I'm not sure if this is, like, in your area of specialism, but what do you think about assessment? And, like, do you believe that there's different ways that we should be assessing people during the interview process which are helpful for creating diversity in our organizations?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And I think, so for example, some people will be better at pitching themselves than others and selling themselves, right? So just because I'm good at having a conversation doesn't mean I'm going to do the best job. And just because I can be charming doesn't mean I'm going to do the best job. So, you need to find a way to judge people, unless they're coming into a sales role where they have to pitch, right? But what happens is, you need a more nuanced process ultimately that's going to give people the opportunities to show things like our problem solving ability, or other, like, what are the essential skills for the role, and give the different people the opportunity to show you those different skills. So it does mean being more thoughtful about what that process looks like, and it does mean being really so much fairer when it comes to kind of the decision making steps. Like, how are we judging this candidate? How could we actually be judging? Are we judging them? And actually they are, like, are we more comfortable with another candidate? Is that why we're more favoring that person there, right? So I mean, it's throughout the whole process you have to be aware of that. But think of it more like a sort of, ideally not 5-course, maybe a 3-course meal, right? Like, but maybe I'll give you a 5-course. What's the amuse-bouche? Like, what's the thing to kind of get the palate at the beginning to get us both excited and enticed about the fact that we may end up working together? Then, the starter will be like the email communications. The main course, okay, that's how we're going to meet each other. But how do we make sure we've got every kind of flavor on that plate, right? So, like, have we got enough protein? Have we got enough vegetables? Have we got, like, what do we need to make sure within the realms of this interview that we've really got to see the full human? How can we make sure that we design for seeing the full human? And then the dessert can be the follow-up, for sure. But part of that follow-up is, are we making decisions in a thoughtful way, or are we just letting people hire from their gut, which, guess what, is full of bias? Oh, I just felt more comfortable around them. Okay, well, that's probably because they're the most like you person that you met.
Yeah, this is true. So using your like 3-course meal analogy, if the hiring managers are kind of doing the main course bit, which is, meeting the individuals and all that kind of thing, how much should we be giving them like a ready-made meal? And like, here's the ingredients. You have to put these ingredients, like a HelloFresh or something like that. Here's all the box, right? Here's the box. You can't go wrong. This is what you need to do. How much should we be templating for the hiring manager? Like, here's the questions you need to ask, so that candidates get a consistent experience of your organization, and to try and eliminate bias? Or do you think we shouldn't be doing that?
Well, here's the thing. I used to be like, okay, here are the tools, folks. I still want you to be able to do the interview as you too, right? So I always wanted the hiring manager to be able to show up as themselves and be authentic. These days, though, if I was to be leading a team like that again, I would do a balance of being a little bit more prescriptive. These are the components that we need to cover, but working with that hiring manager to go, how can we do that in a way that feels authentic to you, right? So being much more partnering more closely to create an interview process that will be the same for every candidate for that job, and ideally within that business area. But maybe it's more like, okay, you need this much vegetables, this much protein, this much carbohydrate, but within carbohydrate you've got these options. You can have potatoes, pasta, like whatever, right? So it's some semi-prescriptive, because I think my old way, which by the way is now like over 6 years ago ish, I left Shazam, so it's prehistoric in recruitment terms. I do stand by wanting the hiring manager to show up as themselves, though, because if they're being truly inauthentic, then the person who's coming for the interview isn't going to have a great experience or get to meet them as they really are.
Yeah, very good point. You definitely can't mask the hiring manager's personality or anything like that by making it over prescriptive. A lot of other interesting comments in the chat here. Jackie said that she feels that being authentic and genuine with candidates goes a long way, and this might include being upfront and self-critical about the process and potentially even the organization. So this way, the candidates know what they're dealing with. That also builds trust. So a bit of self-deprecation, a bit of, we're not perfect and there's things that we need to get better at, for example, including maybe the way that we do these recruitment processes. Seems like a bit of humility is a good thing, absolutely. And I think unless you're saying, yeah, but I've got no input onto that, and I would change it if I could. Unless you're saying that, then you can ideally say that, yeah, we are working on it together, or something like that, which means that, you know, the individual feels that she or he can get involved in shaping, you know, a future more inclusive organization.
Yeah.
Michael's.
I was just going to say, the right candidate should be excited by that too, right? The right person for the challenges that you're facing right now. You know, like, I had a really complex stakeholder dynamic in the BP role, really complex. So when I was hiring for my own team, I was like, look, it's gnarly. This is how gnarly it is. Now let's talk about a real world scenario so you can hear how gnarly it is. And then let's have a back and forth so you get to understand how challenging it is. And I get to hear how you would navigate it if you were coming in, right? So, like, there's an opportunity to bake into the process, sharing the warts and all of what the person is coming into, and do it in a way that means that they can then choose the role that really feels like something they're energized to try to deliver.
Yeah, it's a really good point. If you walk into what seems like, you know, the recruitment equivalent to a highly finessed, award-winning 5-star hotel, then you may think, there's not an awful lot that I'm going to be able to do to change things in here. But especially in like startup and scale up and team company environments where you're building the plane as you're flying it,
yes,
around process and everything else, then that will appeal to the right people. So selecting in, you don't want somebody who needs everything in that type of environment. You really don't actually want people who need everything given to them on the plate. You need people who are builders.
Yeah.
Michael said, has recommended the concept of bringing in an external panel interview members, to show that you're serious about inclusion as an organization. I've got mixed feelings on that. Why have you got to go externally to bring in people to show that you, I don't know, I feel like you need people inside your organization to be able to represent what you're looking for. But any experience of this external panel interview members, Ruth?
Not as such. I mean, the closest that I would get would be maybe a board member. You know, so like they're still somewhat internal. Like if for a leadership role, when I've had no representation, then it might be that you know, a board member can quite easily fill that gap and share their experience of the organization and where they think it's going in a, you know. But beyond that, I don't know. But I'd be interested who those parties could be.
Yeah, no, this is a good point. So Michael said, if you do lack the diversity internally, and let's face it, some, you know, organizations start, the next business I start is probably going to have 2 men, myself and one other, for probably 6 months. So we'll have absolutely no other, you know, diverse representation. So when we do an interview, it will be only me and one other person. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Nigel has made an absolutely brilliant point, I believe. So he said, to the point about letting candidates know what we expect, we've tried asking candidates what they expect and want from us to help form the interview.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it unless you feel like you've really cracked it on this, then asking them what they want means that you're just going to get to a better interview for everybody all round.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to just, you touched on it, but I want to talk about the point around kind of negotiating. Like, let's say there's a salary band of 60 to 100 grand. The man will ask for 101. So how can women typically, you gave one example, but how can women typically make sure that they're not lowballing themselves? And I mean, there's a balance between, I want to get the job, so I don't want to make myself like seem too expensive, versus really making sure that when you start that job, you are not in any way resentful because you've shot yourself in the foot a little bit by going 60 when you could have actually got 100. Yeah, what do you think about this?
Well, so like we all know, no pay is ever truly secret. Now, our generation did used to not tell each other what we got paid, but these days people tell each other what they earn. So you will never, like, there is no, like, you won't get away with it. Women can state their expectations at around 15% less generally than others. But that doesn't mean that they should be paid less. So definitely stop asking people what they're earning right now. If you haven't already, then, you know, stop asking that. You can state what the role can pay instead. But, you know, I would encourage you to offer the same rate as you would for someone that short for that like has really fought you for it. And if somebody is selling themselves short, tell them, right? So like, hey, you know what? Just so you know, we've no like I've heard of in the middle of like somebody's about to be offered a job, um and one of the interviewers has actually ended the call there, said they have got another call, called the candidate, said you're not asking for enough money because it was a woman and it was a woman, and said you need to be asking for this, and given her the power to know what she should be, what the bench was. That is a rare thing, and I'm not saying do that, but why not call it out? Why not say, you know what, you know, like if you are assessing the candidate fairly on the levels that you've got within your organization and you think they sit here and they're asking for something else, then absolutely offer them that. But I do need to call out bias here too, because our societies have a very specific view of how men need to be and how women need to be in the world. And this is not man versus woman. We all police the roles that we have been given. So in a man, we expect you to be brave and not have any emotion other than anger, even though we ask you for more, like whatever, right? As a woman, we expect a woman to be communal and to be agreeable, and not to ask for more. So when a woman asks for more, it is very likely to bring out, and I will use the word disgust, because what you've got there is somebody stepping outside their societal role. And this can come up in both like if that woman is talking to a woman too, exactly the same thing. It's like, hang on a minute, she shouldn't be asking for that. Oh, I don't like that about her. I can't quite put my finger. So just be aware of these biases creeping in, because I have seen, you know, women be even given senior, like C-suite roles, and then be looked down on because they've asked for more money. Like people find it actually disgusting that they've asked for more money. And so we've got to be so careful about this. So if you do have a woman who's negotiating, more power to her. Don't let that then go, well, she's a bit this, or like
pushy, a pushy woman.
Right. Make sure your team knows that this could come up for them, because it's not cool, and it could mean that they start to look less favorably at her application.
Yeah, I actually saw somebody on LinkedIn just this morning shared an application form that it was a man, but an application form that he'd for a head of talent acquisition job, that he'd filled in the application form, and it was, you know, what's your current salary and package, and he'd written, this is not applicable. And then you know, and I think we definitely need to do this. Time's marching on. We've got 3 minutes, and oh, I just wanted to say I've actually done that myself. I've on 2 occasions I've offered female candidates higher offers than the published salaries that we put, because they were better than the job that we were hiring for, to be honest, and we needed to increase the job a little bit. I just want to ask one last question, which is around like benefits and like work environment and things like that. What do we, you know, we all went and worked from home, and now there's like a whole mixture. Big companies seem to be trying to bring people back to the office more often. What do we need to do to make sure that we're creating an environment that is a really great one for women in terms of like where they're working and things like benefits, not just salary, but things around that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I mean, I think you do that by caring about the experience of people when they get there, right? Are they settling in? Do they have what they need? As you're reviewing your policies and things like that, make sure that you're actually asking the humans that you have in your organization how they feel about them and what matters to them. Look at the data. Are those people growing in the organization, or are they staying in the same role? Like really, let's look at that. Let's look at that. Are people who represent something different able to grow in this environment? Yes or no? Because I think that will really make a big difference. But to your point on benefits and return to work and flexibility and like being in the office and things like that, I was talking to someone yesterday and I realized it's a bit like what we've got going on right now is the opposite of what we need. I'm not saying don't be in the office and things like that, but what we've got right now is the equivalent of you've got a couple, one of them suspects the other one is cheating. So they start checking their phone and following them around. And what happens? The relationship gets worse, right? Now, companies are kind of doing the equivalent of that, right? Which is, we're out of control. The market's not great. Let's bring everyone back into the office where we can see them. And of course, they're creating this sort of, rather than creating trust and autonomy and all the things that we know that help human beings to thrive, they're creating a sort of, dictatorship that nobody likes that. Nobody likes being told what to do and where to go and things like that. And I say all that to say, I love in-person collaboration, but maybe there's a way that we could agree with our team what that collaboration looks like and create it, build that be clear about, hey, as a company, this is what we want to do. So how can we build that with you? Like same as in a relationship. Hey, this is what I want. How can I build that with you? What do you want? Like, so it really is like relationships are relationships, man, whether they are personal, professional, they all take time, care, and effort to build.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Unfortunately, we've got to bring this to an end. We're literally going to get kicked off of this meeting in about 30 seconds. Ruth, it's been absolutely wonderful. I've loved all I've written down so many things that I want to follow up with you about afterwards, but there's been also so many great comments in the chat here. Ruth,
thank you, everyone.
Where's the best place for people to follow up with you if they want to do that?
Probably LinkedIn. I know a few people have connected with me already, so LinkedIn is great. Find me there and we can pick up a conversation from there if you want to.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming along. And see you all again soon.
All of you. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruth. All the best.
Bye. Bye.